Melbourne's Underworld has a new frontier, and it doesn't involve drugs. It's tobacco. The Haddara family, once known for meth and weapons, pivoted into black market cigarettes and vapes, building a $30 million empire that stretched from Melbourne to regional Victoria. Australia's sky-high tobacco taxes, up to 65%, made smuggling incredibly lucrative, turning a $150,000 shipment into $10 million on the street. But with profit came violence. Over 2 years, more than 200 firebombings hit Victoria. Teenagers became enforcers, and rival syndicates waged a ruthless turf war. By 2024, police were cracking down on extortion rings, stolen stock, and illegal stores. This isn't just one family's story. It's a snapshot of how organized crime exploits opportunity, policy, and greed in modern Australia. The foundation. When family business meant something darker, to understand how the Haddaras climbed the ladder of Melbourne's underworld, you have to go back to the early 2000s. Back to when the family was already moving through the city's criminal scene, but hadn't yet found the move that would truly change their destiny. At that point, they were doing what most crews in the West were doing. Meth trafficking, weapons moving across suburbs, all the usual rackets that kept the gangland landscape simmering. But everything shifted one night. One moment that would shape the family's path for years. It was a cold June night in 2009 when Mohammed Haddara, brother of crime figure Nazim, pulled up outside his parents' home in Altona North. He stepped out of his car and straight into an ambush. Gunmen rolled past and opened fire, killing him in a brutal drive-by that sent shockwaves through both the Haddaras and the wider underworld. His brother told reporters afterward, barely holding himself together. "He was a gentleman!" He was down to earth, easygoing. Loved his footy, loved everything in life. But inside the criminal world, people were already whispering. Many believed the Chauk family, longtime rivals, had just drawn first blood in a feud that would burn for years. For Fadi Haddara, one of the major players in the family, the loss hit like a bomb. He reportedly spiraled into post-traumatic stress after Mohammed's murder. And that trauma didn't just harden him, it changed him. What emerged from that grief was someone who wasn't just trying to survive the underworld, but someone determined to run it. Within a few short years, Fadi had built himself into the head of a meth operation big enough to catch national attention. By 2014, police were deep into Operation Skyborn, a surveillance campaign that showed just how large the Haddara operation had become. Over 9 months, detectives recorded him dealing 395 grams of crystal meth and circulating multiple firearms. But even that was just the surface. Fadi was using so heavily that at one point he fired a handgun by accident while smoking up to 5 grams of ice a day, barely missing one of his own associates inside his panel-beating shop. When the case reached court, the judge didn't sugarcoat it. His lifestyle was described as lawless. And in 2015, Fadi was hit with nearly 2 years in prison. The empire he was trying to build looked like it might collapse before it ever reached its peak. But this is where the pivot happened, where the story stops being about drugs and becomes something far bigger. Australia's tobacco taxes are among the highest in the world, with excise hitting around 65% of the final price. A legal pack can cost $48 or more. But on the black market, a fraction of that. Suddenly, criminals realized something almost unbelievable. Smuggling tobacco could make 4 times more profit than dealing cocaine or heroin. And yet the penalties were nowhere near as harsh. Think about that. A shipment that costs $150,000 wholesale can turn into $10 million on the street. And if you get caught, the jail time is minimal compared to drug trafficking. It was, in every sense, the perfect setup for organized crime. And by the early 2020s, the Haddaras figured out just how perfect it really was. At the same time, illicit vapes were flooding in from China. Products that cost as little as $2.50 were selling for 10 times that across Australia. That's when the family started shifting gears. The Haddaras slowly moved away from meth and stepped into something much cleaner, much safer, and far more profitable. Tobacco and vape smuggling. And unlike drugs, you didn't need back alley deals. You could sell this stuff right out in the open, through front-lipped convenience stores. Dodgy tobacconists and businesses stocked with illegal brands like Manchester and Double Happiness, products that aren't even legally sold in Australia. By late 2023, 25-year-old former boxer Nazir Haddara, part of the extended family network, rose as a major figure in what police would later describe as a $30 million illegal tobacco empire. The family built a chain of stores across Victoria, set up distribution warehouses in Truganina, and pushed product throughout Melbourne and into regional towns: Geelong, Echuca, Seymour, Yarrawonga, Warrnambool, the whole circuit. The Haddaras were living the dream, making tens of millions while flying under the radar compared to their old drug empire days. The war begins, when competition turned violent. But paradise in the criminal world never lasts long. Rival gangs were waiting in the wings, and they weren't. Afraid to burn everything down to take control, it started quietly in March 2023. Victoria. Police noticed suspicious firebombings at tobacco stores. By October, there were at least 27 confirmed attacks linked to what became known as the Tobacco Wars. But this wasn't random vandalism. This was a deliberate, calculated campaign to dominate the black market tobacco trade. Task Force Luna, a new Victoria police unit focused on organized crime in the illicit tobacco scene, began putting the pieces together. What they uncovered was chilling. A turf war was playing out in real time, and the stakes were enormous. On one side stood the Haddara family and their allies. On the other, Kazem Hamad, a convicted drug trafficker deported to Iraq in 2023, who was somehow still running a violent empire from overseas. Hamad's tactics were cold and methodical. Instead of a direct confrontation, his network firebombed stores linked to rival families, especially Haddara-controlled businesses. One of the most brazen attacks hit a Docklands restaurant owned by Fadi Haddara, causing $700,000 in damage. But the violence wasn't just about property, it was about sending a message: the arsenal of fear. How extortion became the new playbook. By 2024, the tobacco wars had morphed into something darker. Hamad's syndicate introduced organized extortion. Store owners received messages on international WhatsApp numbers: "Stock our product or your store burns." Encrypted messaging wasn't just tech, it was a weapon. Even groups literally calling themselves Crime Family Group were coordinating arson and intimidation campaigns through it. In March 2025, Task Force Luna cracked down. They arrested 12 people tied to these extortion rings, seizing 4 firearms, explosives, knives, and stolen tobacco and vapes from storage across Melbourne. Police discovered teenagers and motorcycle gang members, including Mongols patched members, were being recruited as the foot soldiers, spreading fear across the city. What began as family rivalry had turned into an organized, almost corporate criminal operation. Majid Alibadi, 25, became the public face of this violence. Unemployed and living with his parents, he was cruising around in a $95,000 Mercedes, dining in Michelin-starred restaurants, and spending $30,000 at Fendi boutiques, all funded by orchestrating firebombings and intimidation for Hamad. One of his victims was Rabi Haddara, whose Glenroy tobacconist, valued at $451,000, was damaged in this campaign. The downfall: when your own empire turns against you. The Haddara's reign began to crumble under police pressure and the harsh reality: they were losing the war. By October 2024, Nazir Haddara, the ambitious young leader of the $30 million empire, was arrested at Melbourne Airport trying to fly to Dubai. Police claimed he was a flight risk, and his digital footprints showed he'd already put a deposit on a luxury villa abroad, a clear exit plan. The arrest was a turning point. Magistrate Hodgson granted bail on $150,000 surety with strict conditions: 3 weekly police check-ins, a curfew, and a ban from all illegal tobacco stores. The message was clear: the Haddara's grip was slipping, and law enforcement was closing in. Detective Senior Constable Jessica Keenan told the court that the violence wouldn't stop as long as Haddara and his associates were free. She made it clear: it's widely known among these members of the syndicate that Haddara is involved in these instances of burning shops. Nazir, she said, acted as the director and principal offender, keeping a close eye on the syndicate's finances, cigarette stock and vape sales. Police identified his cousin Hassan Jassim, just 21, as one of the syndicate's main enforcers, while Issa was seen as second in command. But the empire didn't last. What had once looked unstoppable was crumbling fast under pressure from police and rival gangs. In February 2024, 6 men tied to a suspected Middle Eastern crime family were charged with trying to import 10 million illicit cigarettes into Victoria, a $15 million operation. The Haddara's supply chain was under attack on all fronts. The bigger picture shows why this matters. Australia's tobacco excise is meant to reduce smoking, and it has. But it also created something the government didn't intend: a $4 billion black market, one of the most violent criminal industries in the country. Over just 2 years, this trade sparked more than 200 arson attacks in Victoria, turned teenagers into enforcers, and built a whole criminal ecosystem, from importers to storefront operators and henchmen. Unlike drugs, which move in shadows, tobacco is sold in open storefronts in shopping districts. That visibility makes violence a strategy. Every shop is a target, every owner a potential victim, every competitor right there on the street, Victoria police officer. Dr. Martin explained it perfectly. The tobacco trade can be more likely to be violent than the drug trade precisely because of how visible it is. When your competition is just down the road, attacks and intimidation become almost inevitable. And the Haddara's fall didn't end the violence, it just changed who was in charge. Kazam Hamad, deported to Iraq but still running a multi-million-dollar operation, has taken the reins. His brother Matham allegedly directs things from Perth, while lieutenants carry out firebombings across Victoria, New South Wales, and Western Australia. The criminal landscape shifted, but the danger didn't. Even now, in November 2025, police are still battling the illicit tobacco trade. In Western Australia, a 31-year-old man was arrested over commercial-scale distribution, with cash seizures showing he moved more than $8 million interstate. Violence hasn't stopped. It's just moved. The Haddara story is a stark reminder of how organized crime works: opportunistic, ruthless, and quick to exploit whatever market is most profitable with the least risk. Policies designed in government offices can ripple out, creating black markets that attract violence. The Haddaras didn't start out as tobacco kingpins. They were pushed from the drug trade, found a new market, built an empire, and left behind a war that didn't end with their fall. For audiences drawn to true crime, the Haddara story isn't just about one family running a criminal business. It's a window into how organized crime works today. This is a story where government policies clash with criminal ingenuity, where teenagers get pulled into gang life as enforcers, and where a product that's perfectly legal becomes the spark for one of Australia's deadliest criminal conflicts. And unlike the classic gangland wars you've heard about, this one didn't end. It didn't fade, it transformed. New players stepped in, new acts of violence erupted, and billions in illegal profits keep circulating through criminal networks. The Haddaras might have started it, but today they're just a chapter in a much larger, ongoing saga of crime, violence, and the unforeseen fallout of policies that went wrong. The tobacco wars haven't stopped. They've just moved into the shadows, evolving with every new opportunity and every loophole that criminal minds exploit.